Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Monday. I hope everyone is doing well. Now, so what we're going to talk about today, it actually came up after. I feel like I could have spent a whole effed up news stream talking about this, but I didn't find out about it until after the stream I did yesterday. And so I thought we would just take some time out together to review this information because it feels important. And what I'm talking about is this here story that popped up magically on CNN last night. Exasperation and dysfunction. Kamala Harris's frustrating start as vice president. So, there are many things about this that are interesting to me. Now, let's just start off with the obvious. I'm an organizational psychologist in real life. So anytime there's like workplace drama or intrigue, that's going to get my attention. I did my dissertation about workplace bullying. So anytime there might be a hint of toxicity involved, I'm going to gravitate right to that. And I want to know what's going on. And, CNN has actually done a really decent hit piece on Kamala Harris, which I think is the other fascinating aspect of this whole thing. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why is CNN, of all places, doing a hit piece on Kamala Harris? That's really the question that we should be asking ourselves. Why did this information come out now? Because this has been brewing for a while. Anyone who follows Jack Posobiec's tweets on the subject, they know that this is not new. So, why is CNN doing a hit piece like this? What do they hope to gain from it? Those are some of the questions that we will be asking ourselves today, besides the obvious of what's going on. Now, I have not yet read this article. You're going to see this is a long. This is like a Daily Beast Tim Pool level hit piece right here, my friends. That's what this is. CNN went all out on this one. So what I thought we would do in this here stream is we're going to read this little hit piece, and I'm going to tell you if I think there's any there. Listen, I've worked in a lot of toxic organizations. I know how to fix organizations. I know how to I can sniff out toxicity like one of those truffle hunting dogs in the woods can sniff out truffles. I'm going to know if this is bullshit or not. And so that's going to be the first thing that we're going to analyze. But then we're also going to talk about why might this be happening in the first place? I would love to hear your opinions on why this might be happening. I certainly have some of my own. And we're going to talk about what the White House's reaction has been to this. Because that's also, frankly, really, 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 really interesting. Yep, Adrian, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there. That's what I think. I think they're trying to get rid of her. I think that they're trying to position Pete Buttigieg in her place. Because he has the gay card. He's a white man, but he has the gay card. And he does what he's told. And he's a robot, Pete. He knows how to say the right things and spin the story and all that stuff. I swear, there was a time when Pete Buttigieg used to be normal. At least back when he first started coming to New Hampshire. He was normal. He's now a robot. Anyway, we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about Kamala Harris's poll numbers, which are doing so good. And we're going to talk about the White House response to all of this. But before we get into that, folks, I do content around news, politics, culture, all that good stuff. I do content almost every single day of the week. Sometimes I take the weekends off, gotta rest up. But if you enjoy the work I'm doing, I hope you will consider subscribing on whatever platform you're watching on right now, whether that be YouTube, whether that be Rockfin, whether that be Odyssey, or even whether that be on Facebook. Please consider subscribing. Please mount that like button. And of course, the very best thing that you can do to help support my work is to join my Locals community. Locals is a place on the internet where we know we will never be censored. We will never be banned. We can talk about whatever content we want. Locals is also the thing that allows me to create content independently, which means I always get to give you my real opinion. I take in news and information from a variety of sources. I try to tell you what I think the deal is with no frills, no fruffles. Fruffles, that's a new word. No ruffles, no fluff, any of that stuff. I can do that because of the support I get on locals. Now, I've set a little goal for locals. I would really like to get 100 new supporters into my locals community by the end of the year. That would really help me out. That would give me a nice little cushion to be able to continue to do content this regularly, because it really actually does take quite a bit of work to be able to produce content for you guys, even though like the videos don't seem like much, and I understand that, but it takes a lot of work and reading and thinking and comparing things and all that stuff that you guys don't get to see. So it would really help me out. Plus, you're going to get some amazing perks when you become a supporter of my locals community. You're going to get 2 Zoom calls with me every single week. I spend about 6 hours on Zoom with my locals members. We connect as a community. You get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. It's a little like a support group. It's pretty rad. We do them on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern and Thursdays at noon Eastern. You're also going to get book club. You're going to get to be able to comment on all the posts. You're going to be able to unlock all the features of locals and connect with some really amazing people. You can become a supporter at $5 a month. You can give more if you want to, but you don't have to. $5 will do it. You can become an annual supporter at $50 a year, or you can even make a one-time gift, and it all helps me out, and I greatly appreciate it. Shout out to my locals members in the chat. You also, once I get to know you in the Zoom calls and I decide you're not crazy, you also get to become a moderator in my chat on YouTube if you want to be. Don't have to be. No obligation, but you can get the little wrench as long as I decide you're not crazy. Listen, I got to get to know people first, man. But in my locals community, I do actually get to know people. I consider many of my locals members to be my friends. They're my valued confidants, and I couldn't do it without them. So that's that. If you want to join locals, it is, oh, hang on. Let's get a ticker. kb.locals.com. You can join for free too if you just want to check it out, see what's what. I've also pinned the link to the top of the chat on YouTube. Oh, Sleepy Eyes Carter! Hey, Sleepy Eyes Carter. Guys, go subscribe to Sleepy Eyes Carter channel. He is doing a great job creating some awesome content. Really good energy, really good vibe. Thanks for dropping by, my friend. I appreciate it. All right, let's dig into it. So first I want to start off with this article, because this article yes, Adrian. Yeah, well, you're very smart and very normal and a critical member of the locals community, Adrian. So this article actually, like, this started bubbling up last week sometime, where some polls came out, and most people were looking at the fact that Joe Biden's approval rating is ridiculously low. Oh, Grandma Nay, you want to be a mod? I'll make you a mod, Grandma Nay. Hang on. Bing. Look at that. Magic wrench for Grandma Nay. So this article came out last week. Bunch of polls came out last week saying Joe Biden's approval rating is really, really, really low. But Kamala Harris is even lower. Now, this should surprise absolutely no one. Kamala Harris is one of the most unlikable people on the planet. Truly. One of the most unlikable people on the planet. Listen, I live in New Hampshire, as many of you guys know, as I talk about all the time. And in New Hampshire primary season, it's actually kind of fun. And I was really into when the Democratic candidates were running around the state. I made it an effort to see absolutely everyone in person. I was going to all sorts of events. And I'll tell you what, Kamala Harris didn't do anything. And she didn't do anything because no one liked her. No one wanted to support her. She didn't even make it to the first primary. She had an office in Nashua that was basically like the office was never open. There was like signs in the windows, but no one was ever there. And if you looked in the windows, it was like all dirty and there was like nothing going on in the office. And the reason she didn't even make it to the first primary is because she mismanaged her campaign so badly that it ran out of money. No one likes Kamala Harris, and I don't know why the Democrats chose her to be VP. There were so many other, women of color they could have chosen to fill their quota. But let's read what came out in her horrendously bad poll numbers. Vice President Kamala Harris consistently receives lower approval ratings than President Joe Biden in public opinion polls, and a new USA Today / Suffolk survey continues that trend in startling fashion. According to the poll conducted among 1,000 registered voters from November 3rd through 5th, Biden has an approval rating of 38%, and Harris has an even worse rating at 28%. Oh. The poll found that Harris is more unpopular than both congressional Democrats with a 29% approval and congressional Republicans with a 35% approval. And P.S., I'm sure that the Democrats are thrilled that congressional Republicans have a higher approval rating than them, considering it means they're going to get their asses kicked in the midterms, but I digress. Which is pretty hard to do as members of Congress often receive low marks in public opinion polls. Overall congressional approval is at 12. That sounds about right. The Los Angeles Times polling tracker shows that Harris is more unpopular than Mike Pence, Joe Biden, Dick Cheney, and Al Gore were at this point in their respective vice presidencies. I'm sure that's just all because of misogyny. I'm sure it's all just racism and misogyny and racism and misogyny. It's the only reason that Kamala Harris is deeply, deeply, deeply unpopular. The fact that a poll shows Harris under 30% approval is particularly striking because Cheney, who is generally considered to be the most unpopular vice president in modern American history, did not see approval ratings as low as 30% until near the end of George W. Bush's second term. Harris has been the subject of repeated controversy in 2021, with many disparaging leaks from inside the Biden administration painting a less than flattering picture of the vice president. Hang on one sec. NBTT1 or L1, could you provide a deep dive into locals just to help people navigate and understand the platform? Hey, that sounds like a great idea. I can't do it right this second, but I think that sounds like a great idea. But the best advice I would give, to be honest, is set up a free account on locals. Just join the free account. It doesn't cost you anything. You're going to be fine. kb.locals.com. And then you can kind of lurk and you can make your way around and you can see what content's there. That's going to be the best way to figure it out. But I think that's a really good idea and something I'll consider in the future. JA says, not related, but worth looking up. Man running in Bellevue, Washington school board is getting canceled for a racist for acknowledging CRT in the curriculum. Thank you, JA. I will have a look at that. All right, let's keep going. Administration officials have anonymously panned Harris's handling of public appearance and the workplace environment in her office, which we'll be talking more about today. Harris's flagging numbers reportedly have some of her allies worried about a difficult, messy primary fight in 2024 if Biden does not run again. Oh, isn't that interesting? That primary would likely be Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg versus Harris. Harris allies believe. Isn't that interesting? Pete Buttigieg would kick her ass. Listen, let's just be blunt about that. Pete Buttigieg would kick Kamala Harris's ass. If the primary was run anytime, let's just be honest. Kamala Harris is not going to get elected president by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so that's what we have here. This is the backdrop for what's going on. So we have these poll numbers that come out. They're really, 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 really bad. And then magically, out of nowhere, last night, CNN posts an extraordinarily long hit piece on Kamala Harris. Okay, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. I'm sure that wasn't planned at all. Hang on, guys. I'm just trying to make sure, see if I can make it any bigger on the screen. Okay, so let's dig in to this article. I'm just going to take a quick drink before we get into it because I'm going to be reading a lot and talking a lot and my throat's not feeling that great, guys, but I'm going to power through because that's what we do in these scenarios. If there's workplace office drama, I want to know about it. All right, let's see. Exasperation and dysfunction inside Kamala Harris's frustrating start as vice president. Worn out by what they see as entrenched dysfunction and a lack of focus, Key West Wing aides have largely thrown up their hands at Vice President Kamala Harris and her staff, deciding there simply isn't enough time to deal with them right now, especially at a moment when President Joe Biden faces quickly multiplying legislative and political concerns. Do you know what Ben Franklin called the vice president? Pop quiz for the chat. And I'll make sure I'm looking on Odyssey and Rockfin as well. Does anyone know that's watching right now? Do you guys know what Ben Franklin called the office of the vice president? It's a good one in this context. They're so focused, and I think like they're so focused on Joe Biden's multiple legislative and political concerns that they're deciding to ignore Kamala Harris. I know there's a delay, so I'm just giving a second. I hope someone knows. It was in the movie The Contender, which came out in like 2000. The Contender is a great movie. I'm gonna watch that movie again tonight, I think. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. Contender is a great movie. All right, I'm not seeing an answer come through in the chat, so I'm gonna give it to you. Benjamin Franklin said the office of the vice president should be named His Superfluous Excellency. Because the vice president doesn't do anything. The vice president has no responsibility whatsoever, except if there's a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. That's it. That is literally the vice president's only job. His superfluous excellence, you guys, yes, yes, yes. Deborah got it. Yes. David got it as well. That's right. His superfluous excellency. That's exactly how they're treating Kamala Harris. And I don't think there was ever a more deserving person of that particular title. The exasperation runs both ways. Interviews with nearly 36 former and current Harris aides, administration officials, Democratic operatives, donors, and outside advisors who spoke extensively to CNN reveal a complex reality inside the White House. Many in the vice president's circle fume that she is not being adequately prepared or positioned and instead is being sidelined. Okay. So a couple things stand out to me so far. So they spoke extensively to CNN. That means that they were good and ready to complain. They had some stuff to say, and they were going to say it to whoever they could say it to. And that happened to be to CNN. But the other thing is like she's annoyed she's not being adequately positioned. I'm sorry. Presidencies are 4 years long. What does Kamala want to do? Why in year 1 of their presidency is Kamala Harris worried more about how she's portrayed and positioned than she isn't actually doing the effing job she has? I think that's a really good question. The vice president herself has told several confidants she feels constrained in what she's able to do politically. That's because your office holds no responsibilities, Kamala. And those around her remain wary of even hinting at future political ambitions, with Biden's team highly attuned to signs of disloyalty, particularly from the vice president. So, there's like so much emphasis placed on the first woman vice president, the first African American woman vice president. The thing of that is that was always 100% going to wear off. I'm sure that felt really good. Really burns me. The fact that Kamala Harris is the first woman in either the president or the vice president, God, that will be a blemish on our historical record forever. But I'm sure that felt really good when it first happened. I'm sure there was a first woman glow that followed her around for maybe a month or two. But that was always going to wear off, and they damn well should have known this. You cannot find fulfillment forever by being the first of anything, especially if you're an ambitious person. And let's just be honest here. Like, we might not appreciate Kamala Harris's particular form of ambition, but the fact that she's made it to the vice presidency tells us that she is at least ambitious, right? And so now they've taken a person that was ambitious enough to possibly canoodle with people who could put her in powerful positions. She was ambitious enough to do that. And you think you're going to stick Kamala Harris in an office where she has no responsibilities at all except to be a tie-breaking vote in the Senate sometimes, and that's going to be fulfilling to her? Of course not. Of course not. That's not what she's there for. That's not why she's there. She's there for attention. and to have title and prestige and power, darling. That's what she wants. And so you've put her in an office. This is why people should always be careful about getting what they want. Sometimes people think they want something. They think they want something. They could want it with every fiber of their being, and then they get the thing they want, and they find out that they didn't really want that thing, not all that much at all. And I think that's what Kamala Harris is finding out now about the vice presidency, and it's probably what's causing all of this. All right, let's keep going. She's a heartbeat away from the presidency now. She could be a year away from launching a presidential campaign of her own, given doubts through the political world that Biden will actually go through with a re-election bid in 2024, something he's pledged to do publicly and privately, or she'll be a critical validator in 3 years for a president trying to get the country to re-elect him to serve until he's 86. Ain't no way in this lifetime that Joe Biden's going to run for re-election. Joe Biden can barely stand now and give a coherent speech for 20 minutes. That is not going to happen. So this is part of like the Democrats planning for that eventuality. Few of the insiders who spoke with CNN think she's being well prepared for whichever role it will be. Harris is struggling with a rocky relationship with some parts of the White House, while longtime supporters feel abandoned and see no coherent public sense of what she's done or has been trying to do as vice president, being the first woman and first woman of color in a national elected office is historic, but has also come with outsized scrutiny and no forgiveness for even small errors. As she'll often point out, what did I say? Misogyny, racism. It's the only possible explanation for why anyone would criticize Kamala Harris ever is misogyny and racism. That's it. That's all there is. Defenders and people who care for Harris are getting frantic. When they're annoyed, some pass around a recent Onion story mocking her lack of substantive work, one with the headline, White House urges Kamala Harris to sit at a computer all day in case email comes through. When they're depressed, they bat down the Aaron Sorkin rumor that Biden might try to replace her by nominating her to a Supreme Court vacancy. The chatter has already reached top levels of Biden's orbit, according to one person who heard it. Oh my God, dude. Kamala Harris thinks she's going to get nominated to the Supreme Court? The Republicans had better take back the Senate, man. I swear to God. The Republicans had better take back the Senate to protect us from. If Kamala Harris gets on the Supreme Court, I quit. I'm leaving the country. I'm going to move to the Caribbean. I'm going to go to a private island. I'm going to set up a little house on the beach. I'll live in a hut. I don't even care. If Kamala Harris makes it to the Supreme Court, I quit. I'm done. She's perceived to be such a weak position that I don't actually think Kamala Harris is going to make it to the Supreme Court, by the way. I don't think that's realistic. I'm just saying. She's perceived to be such a weak person. The top Democrats in and outside of Washington have begun to speculate privately, asking each other why the White House has allowed her to become so hobbled in the public consciousness, at least as they see it. She's very honored and very proud to be the Vice President of the United States. Her job as the number 2 is to be helpful and supportive to the president and to take on the work that he asks her to take on, says Elaine, the Lieutenant Governor of Eleni, the Lieutenant Governor of California and longtime friend. Eleni spoke with the vice president last Monday before Harris departed for a diplomatic mission to France. Why is Kamala Harris going to France when she hasn't even gone to the southern border? And listen, I'm not one of these people that obsesses about immigration. I'm just not. But it does seem a little bit perturbing to me that Kamala Harris is gallivanting off to France when she refuses to actually go to the southern border. I'm just saying. It is natural for those of us who know her, know how much more helpful she can be than she is currently being asked to be. That's where the frustration comes from. Okay. What happens when you are put into a job or you happen to put yourself into a job? Because Kamala Harris was very excited about being the vice president at some point. Remember when she was out jogging and they declared Biden the winner? And she had all this press just, Joe, we did it, Joe. We did it. She was very excited to be the vice president at some point. Now that the reality is set in, she's not so excited anymore. Now, the thing of it is, and we just have to treat this like any normal job, okay? We have to treat it as any normal job. To say that she accepted this job, her boss is giving her a list of assignments, and she's saying, meh, don't want to do those assignments. Well, when you accept a job, when you are elected by the American people to do that job, it doesn't matter if you like what you're being asked to do. This is a time when you need to put on your big boy and girl pants and do the effing job. That's it. You put on your big girl pants and you do the job. And you try to, like, I wrote a whole book about this. It's called Zen Your Work. The thing of it is like you can actually trick yourself into being excited about what you're being asked to do. But at the end of the day, it is your job to get yourself into a mental headspace of showing up and saying, you know what, this might not be my favorite thing to do in the world, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to show up. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to collect my government salary, and I'm going to try the best that I can. I'm going to try to be excited about it. I'm going to try to be happy that I'm in this big, cushy job, because it's not like she's a cashier at Walmart. Let's just be honest. But that is your responsibility when you ask to be placed into a job, particularly a job that you are elected to serve the people. Kamala Harris isn't doing that, which to me reflects on her emotional maturity or lack thereof. That's what this is. She is a selfish person that is putting her own needs ahead of what she has been asked to do. And she's frustrated that she's not being given more important things. Well, Kamala, welcome to the real world. Unless you work for yourself, you are going to be at the whim of doing what your boss wants you to do. That's just the reality. Millions of Americans right now don't like that their boss is demanding that they get vaccinated. I'm not making a comment on that either way. Check with the CDC for all your vaccine related information. The CDC is your god, as we well know. But millions of Americans don't like that their bosses are demanding they be vaccinated. But guess what? That's the choice you make. By the way, if your boss is demanding you do that, don't quit your job. Wait to be fired. Things might change, as we've seen. Josh, oh my gosh, says, Carlin, there's a gentleman named George Ventura that has been investigating slavery of illegal crossers by cartels growing weed in Antelope Valley. Okay, Josh. I know you're in my locals. If you want to post some information in my locals, and maybe you already have, because I didn't see it, I apologize for that. But if you post some information in my locals, I'll take a look. An incumbent vice president should be a shoo-in for their next time their party's political nomination is open, but guessing who might launch a theoretical primary challenge to Harris has become an ongoing insider parlor game. Other politicians with their own presidential ambitions have privately acknowledged that they are trying to figure out how to quietly lay the groundwork to run if and when Harris falters, as they think she might. The reality is more complex and looks different to people more familiar with how any White House actually works. Harris is the first vice president in decades to come into office with less Washington experience than the president. And finding her footing was always going to be hard. Presidents and vice presidents and their staff often clash. Barack Obama's West Wing tended to be dismissive of Biden's staffers, a number of whom are now with him in the West Wing. And Biden himself had a number of stumbles early in that job. Republicans and right-wing media turned Harris into a political target from the moment she was picked for the ticket. And implicit racism and sexism have been constant. Well, okay. There is always going to be a natural acclimation period anytime people start a new job. Typically, it tends to be about 6 months. So they may be a little bit beyond that at this point, but it's actually not uncommon. 6 months to a year is going to be, especially when we're talking about bringing, and again, I'm just speaking generally, when we're talking about bringing two big teams together, there's going to be a period in which those two teams adjust to working with each other. They figure out the norms. They figure out how they're going to communicate. One team pisses off the other. They learn from it. The other team pisses off the other team. Like, this is just natural, right? This is not anything new. But what we need to be looking at is the fact that Kamala Harris and her staff seem to feel they're entitled to, I don't know, consideration or special privilege or anything like that. The president is the top. The vice president is underneath. The vice president is not entitled to anything. I'm sorry. The vice president has like two constitutional obligations: to break a tie in the tie-breaking vote in the Senate and to be alive in case the president dies. That's it. Kamala Harris is not entitled to anything beyond that, but her office seems to be acting like they are. There needs to be an adjustment of the norms. Okay? That's what's going on. And of course, racism and sexism, as we've already talked about. It's a conundrum for her. People are expecting their historic vice president to make history every day, when in fact she's trying to carry the duties of a secondary role. Her role is secondary. Harris is being judged not just by how she's doing the traditional duties of the vice president, said Minion Moore, a longtime Democratic operative who has become Harris's most important outside advisor. It's a little more subliminal, but it's real. What is her playbook in history? Harris has emerged as a quiet force in the administration, Moore says, and she's focused attention on different issues, sometimes just by being present in the room. Dude, you know you're talking to an advisor when they're like, let me rephrase. You know you're talking to a consultant, when they're like, you change things just by being present in the room. That is such a nonsense consultant thing to say. You change the landscape through your presence. Oh my god, you can almost picture exactly how that went down. Moore said Harris' approach to being constantly asked, should we be doing more on the issues? Are we communicating with people whose lives are impacted? Are we missing any key constituency groups? Well, surely that was top on her list when they auditioned child actors to come talk to Kamala about NASA and space. Do you guys remember this? There's this video that came out where Kamala is trying to look like a likable person around children, and they had auditioned children to play those roles. They'd like auditioned child actors to be in those roles to look like they were naturally having a conversation with Kamala Harris when in fact the whole thing was orchestrated. I'm sure she was definitely thinking about being with the people at that point. But with many sources speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss the situation more frankly, they all tell roughly the same story. Harris's staff has repeatedly failed her and left her exposed, and family members have often had an informal say even within her office. So even some who have been asked for advice lament Harris's overly cautious tendencies and staff problems, which have been a feature in every political office she's held from district attorney to U.S. Senate. Oh, really? Then no one should be surprised. I'm curious in the chat. I'm going to run a poll in the chat. I gotta do this. Okay. Will Joe Biden run for re-election? Yes or no? I want to see what you guys think in the chat about Joe Biden's possibility of running for re-election. Go ahead. Bing! And this is only on YouTube. Sorry, Odyssey and Rockfin. Only on YouTube. We're going to see what you guys have to say about that. All right, guys, if you're enjoying this so far, please make sure you mount that like button. Please make sure you're subscribed if you haven't been already. And just for extra measure, if you aren't yet subscribed to my channel, or excuse me, if you are subscribed to my channel, if you've double checked, you've made sure you haven't been unsubscribed, please turn on notifications. I'd really like to get the notification percentage up on my channel because apparently no one is getting notifications anytime I post anything. So please just double check, please, and thank you. All right. Yep, looks like a good 81% of you in the chat think that nope, Joe Biden is not going to be running for re-election. Oh, 82% now. We'll let that run a couple more minutes, see how much it changes. Let's keep going. A central component, sometimes forgotten. Biden aimed to model his relationship with Harris on his own vice presidency and directed aides early in his presidency to employ her in a similar fashion. And by the way, of all of the people who should understand what it's like to be in the office of the vice president, it's Joe Biden. He should absolutely still understand this. But, I mean, this is reflective. This is also, I mean, let's be honest, Joe Biden's not running anything, right? He's not running anything. But this is also reflective of Joe Biden's leadership. This is reflective of whoever is running the show, their lack of leadership in this area. Because frankly, they should be having different conversations with Kamala Harris. If they're resorting to getting a hit piece in CNN, then they don't want this to be functional. I'm going to say this again because this could be easily missed. If CNN is doing a hit piece on the vice president, that means that there is a lack of willpower on the president's staff for this to be a functional thing. The mere existence of this hit piece means that they are disinclined to make this work. Okay? They don't want her to improve. This is not how you improve performance. Not in any way. They want her to sabotage herself. That's why this exists. All right, still 81% of you in the poll. We're going to end it there. I think that's good enough. He arranged weekly lunches just as he'd held with Obama and invited Harris to join him for his morning classified intelligence briefings. Harris, meanwhile, threw herself into proving her commitment to the president and the administration, using his relationship with Obama as her guide. Even then, some White House aides questioned whether Biden's experience as vice president would easily translate to someone with far different qualifications and skills into a much different moment. After Harris became known in the first few months as often standing by Biden's side in the frame as he made big speeches, even after she'd introduced him herself, the West Wing appears to have overcorrected. So she has been with the president noticeably less. Remember when they made this big deal? They're like, this is the Biden-Harris administration. That had never been done before. Have they stopped doing that? I don't know. Are they still calling it the Biden-Harris administration, or are they just calling it the Biden administration right now? That's a good question. Not just in public. A week and a half ago, as Biden and his aides and multiple outside allies rattled through calls all day trying to lock down wavering lawmakers ahead of the House infrastructure vote, Harris spent the afternoon touring a NASA flight center in suburban Maryland. We weren't going to cancel our schedule just because of the House's foolishness, and Harris aides said. Mary Lou says, just Biden? I don't know. I'm going to look that up. But that's not exactly how it played out. While she attended some meetings Biden hosted with key lawmakers, there were many more that she didn't attend, to the point that it was noteworthy that she made some unscheduled drop by one session in the final stretch. Harris had only been in Washington 4 years, and to the White House just one time before being sworn in as vice president. Missing out on the main meetings deprived her of an important aspect of presidential apprenticeship from a self-styled master of how to actually get deals through Congress. A self-styled master. Well, that's saying a lot, isn't it? Aides to the vice president point to 150 engagements with members of the House and Senate since March, accounting for every conversation she'd had with lawmakers about the subject of infrastructure. Ding, ding, ding. They call this Quiet Hill diplomacy, and it includes inviting lawmakers to join her when she's visiting their home states or holding events in Washington, many of which have touted actual events of the infrastructure bill behind the price tag. Harris has helped to detect concerns from outside the Beltway and has attempted to give political cover to members worried about losing their seats after voting for legislation. It's never just a roundtable. It's always part of a larger strategic process, Harris spokesperson Simone Sanders said. Yeah, right as Rain says, I think they dropped it, just Biden now. Isn't that telling? Isn't that telling? One of those roundtables was in late September when Harris was invited by Representative Nanette, I don't know how to say that last name, a California Democrat, to co-host a discussion with Latina business leaders in the vice president's ceremonial office. The Congresswoman was hesitant to support all of the compromises on the progressive initiatives in the infrastructure bill. The White House asked Harris to stress to her how much her vote was needed, and so she did. Several aides to the vice president highlighted this as a key example of her under-the-radar influence. The representative ultimately voted yes, but a person, which of course she was going to, But a person who discussed the decision with the Congresswoman said that while she appreciated hearing from the vice president, what really swayed her was the Congressional Progressive Caucus deciding to support the bill. Obviously, Kamala Harris ain't changing anyone's mind. Andrea L says Harris is the epitome of the song King Nothing by Metallica. That is a great song. I liked that whole album. I know it's not like one of the more popular ones. Not like, I mean, it's not like the Black album or anything, but like, that's a good album. I swear, I'm going to listen to that again. Even though Metallica politically sucks, that's okay because I enjoyed their music back in the day. Come on. This is absolutely journalism. What are you talking about? This is great. All right. Harris aides cite how much of what's in the infrastructure bill connects back to the legislation she worked on well in the Senate, including accessible broadband, wildfire defense, water cleanup, and clean energy school buses. And in 30 events over 7 months touting the bill in local media markets, they believe she played an integral role in selling the administration's efforts. No one believes that Kamala Harris had influence on this. Perhaps, one Harris aide offers, the issue is that some in the West Wing don't have a constant knowledge of what the vice president's team is doing. We feel like a central component of that overall effort. Well, the thing is, it's your job to keep them informed. It's not their job to be checking up on you. It's your job to keep them informed. A leader not being put in positions to lead. I'm sorry. Vice president is not the leader. This is the problem. This entire problem hinges on the fact that Kamala Harris does not understand her role. Kamala Harris doesn't understand her role. Kamala Harris is trying to act like she has a different role than she has. That is the underlying basis of all of this. This happens all the time in professional environments where people try to act like they're in a different role because they can't just be happy in the role that they're in. Kamala Harris has literally the biggest do nothing job of all time. She could kick back, play games all day, learn to knit, do something with her time, still be in a great ceremonial role. She could figure out a way to be perfectly happy in this do nothing role, which is exactly what the vice presidency is. But she's trying to make it something it's not. Don't make this mistake in your job. Find a way to be happy in the role you have. Find a way, if you have to be in this role, sorry, a little fruit fly flying around. I don't know what the hell that's about, but find a way to be happy in the role that you have. Don't try to do a job that is not the role that you have. That is going to lead to error. It's going to lead to pissing off your boss, which is what's going on here. You're probably going to piss off the people you're working with, which is what's going on here. Yeah, exactly. M169 says she's acting like co-president is a thing. She's not the co-president. She's the vice president. And once if she can get herself to a place where she is comfortable being the vice president, being in that secondary role where she doesn't really have to do anything, maybe she can learn to knit. I don't know. She's going to be much happier and she's probably going to be more successful. May seem counterintuitive, but do the job you have. Get happy in that job you have. You'll piss a lot less people off. Harris has also complained to Confidence about not being a greater part of the president's approach to the Afghanistan withdrawal, despite telling CNN at the time that she was the last one in the room when the decision was made, leaving her without more to draw on when she defended him publicly. When Biden picked Harris as his running mate, he was essentially anointing her as the future of the Democratic Party. Now, many of those close to her, what CNN is leaving out here is that Kamala Harris was heard. So here's what I heard. You guys can tell me if you heard something different in the chat. Here's what I heard. They asked Kamala Harris to give a speech about the Afghanistan withdrawal. And she said, this shit's not getting put on me. And she refused to do it. That's what I heard. When Biden picked Harris as his running mate, he was essentially anointing her as the future of the Democratic Party. Now, many of those close to her feel like she's shirking her political duties to promote. It feels like he's shirking his political duties to promote her and essentially setting her up to fail. Her fans are panicked, watching her poll numbers sink even lower than Biden's, worrying that even the base Democratic vote is starting to give up on her. She doesn't have any fans. I call bullshit. Nick H says if Harris becomes president, she'll be ruthless. Oh, dude, you know it. You know it. I do not. I'm going to be really unhappy if Kamala Harris becomes president. I'm rooting for Biden to make it. I want Biden to make it. Biden for another 3 years and some odd months is a better eventuality than Kamala Harris as president every single day of the week. Kamala Harris is a leader, but is not being put in positions to lead. That doesn't make any sense. We need to be thinking long term. We need to be doing what's best for the party so that a top donor to Biden and other Democrats, imagining how to make the case directly to the president. You shouldn't be putting her in positions to succeed as opposed to putting weights on her. If you did give her the ability to step up and help her lead, it would strengthen you and strengthen your party. One of the what on one inside on one issue, Harris actually asked to be assigned voting rights. Progress has been slow, in part because Biden is focused on passing his own domestic agenda, even though Harris has said privately that filibuster must be scaled back if real progress is to be achieved. Biden has said as much publicly now. Well, that's not going to happen. Sorry. Thank you, Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is a champion. Hit that like button, mount that like button for Joe Manchin, who is saving us all from certain ruin, and Kristen Sinema as well. Because if that filibuster goes, we are effed. There are a couple eventualities in which we are effed. Number one, the Democrats ever pack the Supreme Court. We are effed if they pack the Supreme Court. Number two, filibuster. Filibuster is the only thing that protects the rights of the minority party. That's it. That's it. We have nothing else. Packing the court or filibuster. And by the way, that's true on the other side too. If the Republicans take things back and they do either of those things, it is equally stupid. Jose, Biden needs to hold the line. Oh, I hope so. Pray for Biden. I know we don't like him. I know, but he has dementia and it's very sad. And we need him to stay alive. All we need Joe Biden to do is stay alive. That's it. That's it. That's all that needs to happen. And though Harris has told confidants that she's enjoying a good working dynamic directly with Biden, those who work for them describe their relationship in terms of settling into an exhaustive stalemate. Suspicion has sprouted out of bitterness. Last month, White House aides leapt to the defense of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who was being hammered by outrage by Fox News host Tucker Carlson and like-minded online pundits for taking paternity leave after the adoption of his twins in September. Well, that wasn't exactly why he was being hammered. He was being hammered because of the supply chain crisis. That's why. Secretary of Transportation can usually fly under the radar, which is exactly what they were hoping would happen with Pete Buttigieg. Then there was a supply chain crisis, and he actually needed to do something, and he was nowhere to be found. Harris loyalists tell CNN they see in that yet another example of an unfair standard at play, wondering why she didn't get similar cover anytime she's been attacked by the right. It's hard to miss the specific energy that the White House brings to defend a white man, knowing that Kamala Harris has spent almost a year taking a lot of hits that the West Wing didn't want to take themselves, said a former Harris aide, reflecting conversations last month among several former aides and current allies. Guys, we need to come up with an emoji that can be put into chat whenever there is an accusation of racism in this article. Racism and or misogyny. Does anyone have a good suggestion for an appropriate emoji that can be used to signify racism or misogyny? Put your best emoji in the chat, please. We will pick one out that everyone can use. And then anytime I mention racism or misogyny, or, I mean, it's after 5 o'clock. It's almost 6. We could also do drink. Crying child emoji. Yeah, that could work, Adrian. Yep. I think that's a good option. You could also just take a drink every time I mention racism while reading in this article. Oh, looks like we got some options coming in. Let's see. Let's see. Clown. I think that that's the most on the nose. I do. I do. We've got cry. We've got shocked cat. We've got face palm. We've got glass of milk. I like that one, Tia. I do. I'm gonna go with clown. Okay. Anytime we mention racism in the article or misogyny, I want to see a chat full of clowns. Okay. Or if you're feeling extra saucy, clown plus world. I think that that's gonna be great. Yes, exactly. Clown. A no to James Lindsay. Exactly. Precisely. Okay. Buttigieg, of course, isn't just a former 2020 Democratic primary rival to many party insiders suspicious Harris supporters. He is a likely challenger for the next open Democratic presidential nomination, whether that comes in 2024 or 2028. White House aides say they aren't pitting one against the other. The difference in the response, these aides think, was that Buttigieg hasn't done anything wrong by taking time to be with his new children. Buttigieg's leave was a conveniently timed reminder that Biden is pushing for national paid leave law to be part of the social safety net package. That's okay, Violent Femme. You can use whatever icon you want. That's okay. I'm not going to force anyone to do anything. That's the difference from when Harris has created problems for herself, White House aides believe, such as when she didn't push back on a student who accused Israel of an ethnic genocide. West Wing aides weren't going to clean up after that. But even when Harris faced her own manufactured outrage from the right, like when an innocuous tweet about enjoying the long Memorial Day weekend was said to her be insulting dead veterans, White House aides also remained silent. Oh no. Oh no, guys. Kamala Harris got mean tweets. Oh no. How sad for her. If you need, I'm sorry, if you need your boss to come to your defense when you get mean tweets on the internet, maybe you are not cut out to be in a position of public service in the second most powerful job in the goddamn country. I'm just saying. The list of complaints between the West Wing and Vice President's office keeps growing. Even stemming from Harris's first assignment from Biden this spring, the situation became a back and forth of irritations, some real, some perceived. Harris's team was mad Biden had been assigned to her to handle diplomatic relations with the Northern Triangle nations in hopes of addressing the root cause of migration to the US, but gave her no role on the southern border herself. I'm sorry, what? Let me just read this sentence again. Harris's team was mad Biden had assigned her to handle diplomatic relations with the Northern Triangle nations in hopes of addressing the root causes of migration to the US, but gave her no role on the southern border itself. Does that seem wrong to anyone? Does it seem wrong that Kamala Harris had no role on the southern border? Because my recollection is that she was tasked with fixing the problem on the border. That's my recollection. Please tell me if I am wrong or misinterpreted that in any way. What became the most visible crisis in the early days of Biden's presidency was unaccompanied minors overwhelmed federal government resources. It seemed like an all around politically losing assignment, even though Biden had seen it as a sign of respect because it was the same job Obama had given him as vice president. Oh, hang on. Hang on. You want to talk about misogyny for a second? So, Joe Biden gave to Kamala Harris the exact same job that Barack Obama gave to Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris's aides just didn't think she was up to the task? I don't know, that seems a little bit misogynistic to me, particularly when it seems like Joe Biden was assigned the exact same job when he was vice president. Why wasn't this an important enough job for Kamala Harris? I'm just saying. All right. As CNN previously reported, Harris herself has said she didn't want to be assigned to manage the border, aware that it was a no-win political situation that would only sandbag her in the future. But Biden's team was annoyed that Harris fumbled answers around the border, including when she gave an awkward, laughing response about not visiting it during a spring interview with Lester Holt. Okay, so the thing is, again, Kamala Harris has a fundamentally different priority in this job than Joe Biden has, right? Because it seems to me that Biden handed her an assignment that the vice president had previously done, that he had previously done in the role. And Kamala Harris is like, nope, that's going to make me look bad. So in this rare occasion, it seems as though the Biden administration actually asked Kamala Harris to handle something, and she kind of refused to do it. That's what it seems like to me. Again, she's not doing the job she's in. She's trying to do the job she wants, not the job she's in. This is the problem. As some around Harris see it, the White House failed to come to her defense. This was especially galling since they had given her the unpleasant task of her first foreign trip of carrying the administration's harsh do not come policy, according to one source familiar with the workings of the office. A number of West Wing aides were mad when a few weeks later she made a sudden trip to the border after her staff gave only a few days' warning to the White House, particularly after the White House aides had taken time to knock down the idea that she should go as half-baked Republican spin. But this was in part a misunderstanding. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain and a small circle of White House aides had known about the trip far in advance, but had been careful not to spread word to avoid leaks. West Wing makes clear they aren't coming to her rescue. Now, this is a little bit of bullshit, okay? So I'm going to take Kamala Harris's side just this once. And again, I'm trying to approach this as an organizational psychologist, okay? I'm trying to be fair. I have to take Kamala Harris's side just this once because if you want someone to be successful, you need to set them up for success. Again, I think that the existence of this article is all the indication that we need that they don't want her to be successful, not at all, not in any way. That's part of the problem. They don't want her to be successful. If you want someone to be successful, you set them up for success. If you don't want someone to be successful, you do hit pieces on CNN. All right. Sorry, guys, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so I'm just going slow. We're going slow and steady today. Slow and steady wins the race. Biden aides have repeatedly told Harris aides that they'd love to have her doing more and asked the vice president's office to come up with plans for how to get her involved, according to people familiar with conversations. Though staffs were on multiple calls per week, West Wing aides are often left wondering why there's not more follow through. Because she's not doing the job she has, she's doing the job she wants. Aware of her stumbles and the ticking political clock, Harris's chief of staff, Tina, went to Klain over the summer. They were drowning. They needed more help. Klain is known as a Harris defender in the White House and does a weekly one-on-one meeting with her in the West Wing office to help her strategize. As a former chief of staff to two vice presidents, Klain knows the dynamic well. Talking with Tina about the staff, Klain said the vice president's office budget were separate and advised her to think creatively about drawing on other resources in the office and reassigning staff. Klain, in a statement to CNN, downplayed any criticism of the vice president, saying Harris and her team are off to the fastest, strongest start of any vice president I've ever seen. Well, we all knew we couldn't trust Ron Klain's judgment to begin with, and I think that has now absolutely been assured. Citing a range of work from stressing COVID-19 vaccine equity to meeting with many foreign leaders, Klain says anyone who has the honor of working closely with the vice president knows that her talents and determination have made a big difference in the administration. Harris aides point out that Biden was never subjected to the kind of attacks she regularly endures, or to a toxic social media culture. Yes, because Joe Biden didn't have social media in 2008. Are you kidding me? In one recent example, a Republican super PAC tweeted a video inventing a claim that Harris spoke with a fake French accent. No, she totally spoke with a fake French accent. She totally did. At a stop during her trip to Paris, which was picked up in some news outlets. There have been some changes to the vice president's office to address these concerns. Two new hires were made in September to help her with long term planning and communication. This has helped improve relations with the West Wing, while Tina was appointed to the Democratic National Committee for backup. The DNC hired a consultant in part to help with the Harris portfolio. This has not been going well either, according to people familiar with Harris's staff, usually only reaching out to ask for buffering tweets about everything is about Twitter. They usually only reach out to ask for buffering tweets about problems or negative stories arise rather than being more proactive. Meanwhile, Tina has been turned down by several others who've been unwilling to work in the office. Good for them. And several people currently on staff have started to reach out to contacts to say they're looking to leave, according to the sources who've gotten those calls. That means it's a toxic working environment. That means that Kamala Harris, instead of being responsible to her staff, and acting like a leader is acting like a spoiled child who is not getting her way and is passing that toxicity down to the staff. That's what that means. I mean, it's pure selfishness. And frankly, it's also just like, excuse me, a complete and total like lack of gratitude. Like, you find yourself in the position of being vice president of the flipping United States and you're going to act like a spoiled child, I'm sorry. That's just a lack of gratitude for the gifts and opportunities in which you have been given. Mean tweets, my God. If you don't want to deal with me, these people honestly think that the world runs on Twitter. Never, ever, 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 ever trust anyone who tells you that the world runs on Twitter. Please. Those people are fundamentally unhinged from reality. The vice president's office is dismissive of many of these concerns. Sanders, in a statement provided to CNN, pointed to the successes on a recent trip to Paris, a priority mission which Biden dispatched Harris to soothe over bruised diplomatic relations. It is unfortunate that after a productive trip to France, in which we affirmed our relationship with America's oldest ally and demonstrated U.S. leadership on a world stage, and following a passage of a historic bipartisan infrastructure bill that will create jobs, blah, 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 some in the media are more focused on gossip, not the results that the president and Vice President Harris have delivered. But many friends and supporters of Harris, as well as some on the staff and in a kitchen cabinet of experienced Democratic advisors, feel like she's caught in a sort of political mess up merry-go-round. They blame reporters they see as changing incessantly negative stories and playing into undeniable structure issues of race and gender. The vice president is often on guard for those double standards herself, but the concern is high enough that informal network of outside advisors, many of whom are veterans of Hillary Clinton's campaign, have come together to both point out inadvertent bias in Harris's coverage and attempt to better amplify the work Harris is doing. She's not only get those clown emojis ready. She's not only the first woman vice president, but the first woman of color. This is a moment that has to succeed. Otherwise, we are fearful that this could set us back as women for a long time, said one outside advisor. Top aides say privately that they have come to regret that Harris didn't ask for a more well-defined assignments coming into the administration. Yes, generally when you are taking a job, you should have structure for that job, which would have allowed her to distinguish herself, but the vice president herself has been reluctant to make demands for any at this point, feeling this would look disloyal to Biden. They're consistently sending her out there on losing issues in the wrong situations for her skill sets, at a high-level former Harris aide. Then there's frequent complaint about the lack of follow-through from the vice president's office, such as on the southern border, When Fernando Garcia, executive director of Border Network for Human Rights, met with Harris during her trip to El Paso, Texas this summer, he was optimistic about her potential influence on immigration policy. But months later, Garcia says she just disappeared. We haven't seen any substantive messaging push for better immigration policies, he told CNN. We haven't seen any leadership. Harris loyalists. I wonder how many Harris loyalists there are. Probably not many. Themselves worry that she'll pay a price for her own loyalty to the president and her willingness to take on what they view as a thankless assignment. Biden aides have made clear that they are focused on promoting and protecting him, especially since his approval rating will likely define the 2022 midterms and his promised run for re-election in 2024. Harris's team has argued over whether she is going too far in subsuming herself to Biden, a back and forth that dates to the transition when Harris was pushed to turn over the email list from her campaign and super PAC to the DNC. This was a good idea, some argued, because it would show Harris is a team player, helped raise tens of millions of dollars for the DNC. Others pushed back, saying turning over the list would mean losing control and access to it, which could be debilitating if Harris ends up facing a primary fight for the presidential nomination, as many expect she would. Okay, general side note, if you build an email list, you never give that list to anyone. Never, ever, ever. It's just a good measure, man. If you build an email list, you will lose instant trust and credibility with everyone who signed up to be on that email list. If you give it out to anyone, don't do that. That was a bad move. Let's see. Flournoy added, I think that's Tina. Flournoy ended the dispute in favor of turning it over. They were all on the same team, she said on a phone call with lawyers explaining the decision. But months later, the email list still hasn't arrived at the DNC. Oh no, not that. Harris aides have been told that the transfer had been held up by a complaint about the Biden campaign lodged with the Federal Election Commission. As the vice president's chief of staff, Harris loyalists believe Tina should be prioritizing Harris' interests over those of the White House. If someone is accusing me of being loyal to Biden, I'll take that. If someone is accusing me of being disloyal to Kamala Harris, I won't take that, Tina said. She doesn't believe there's a conflict between being loyal to her and being loyal to Joe Biden. Well, in theory, she should be correct. Several Biden campaign aides spoke of putting a blanket around Harris after she was picked as the running mate last year and advised against bringing on staff from her presidential campaign, though the final decision around hires and structure were left at her discretion. That's left her with a handful of current aides she knew before she was vice president, and they don't know her well. She's had several months. That's an easily fixable problem. Like, I understand building a new team at the beginning, but she's had several months. She's had several months to do this. This is a fixable problem. This isn't even that hard. Feeding dissension internally, many suspect each other putting their own career interests ahead of hers. Oh, you think? Or performing to try to build their relationships with her on the fly. Former aides have tried to offer advice to the current crew, urging them to get the vice president away from scripted events behind the podium. They say she often goes down her own rabbit holes preparing for these events, where more cut-off interactions with her would better play to her strengths. Okay, we're almost done. Okay. Guys, we're about an hour into this, so if you are enjoying this so far, please mount that like button. I also invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Rockfin or Odyssey or Facebook, and please make sure you join me in my locals community, kb.locals.com. It's in the ticker. It's free to join. You can check it out, see if it's for you. But at least we'll have a way to keep in touch should I get some stupid YouTube strike or other nonsense. All right, let's keep going and finish up. Harris's closest aides frustrate even her. In and around Harris's circle, they speculate that there must be someone getting in her way. Some think that it's the president himself, leaving her out in the cold, prioritizing his own agenda. Dude, the president of the United States, whether you like him or whether you don't, is allowed to prioritize his own agenda over whatever Kamala Harris wants. That's why he's the president and she is the vice president. It's a simple hierarchy. Some blame specific West Wing aides, whom they feel sure are out to undercut her. Some fear the vice president is, as she has often done in her political life, leaning heavily on her sister Maya Harris and brother-in-law Tony West and niece Mina Harris, who they sense exerting influence over everything from staff hires to political decisions. Not a not uncommon situation historically among presidents and vice presidents. Dude, Kamala Harris's sister Maya is why Kamala Harris's presidential campaign ran out of money. Her sister, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I am. Her sister was her campaign manager. She is the one that spent all their money, resulting in them having to pull out of the race. It's her sister's fault. And she's still taking advice from her. Mistake number 1. Right there. Several people familiar with the operations of the vice president's office say that after a spike in involvement earlier this year, the family has been pushed further out again recently. Few expect that to remain the case, especially with the vice president feeling isolated and unsure of who she can trust on her staff. If she doesn't feel like she can trust someone on her staff, she needs to fire that person and bring in new staff. This is staffing 101. You don't keep people on your staff that you don't trust. It's going to be a horrible situation for you. It's going to be a horrible situation for them. It's just the right thing to do. Or you get yourself to a place where you can trust them. Do some team building exercises. Do a retreat. Go do a ropes course or something. Go do something fun. Build trust. You can build trust with the people you work with. People do it all the time. Harris herself has complained about the lack of support, internally and externally, after appearing at a fundraising event in Virginia for former Governor Terry McAuliffe, who lost election. In September, ahead of the gubernatorial election, she asked why she's been put in a situation that ran counter to the good modeling of COVID-19 protocols she has been trying to stick to, as she looked out at a sizable crowd gathered in the mini mansion backyard, largely maskless, dipping into an Indian food buffet. Oh, I totally want Indian food right now. Luckily, I'm going to England on Thursday. I will be eating lots of curry in England. I'll tell you that right now. I cannot wait. I'm going to eat lots of curry. I don't need English food. I don't even know what English food is. I do know curry, though. Curry is delicious. She's not the only one who noticed the operation falling short. When she appeared at an event in the Bronx in October to promote the administration's Build Back Better agenda, longtime supporters grumbled that not only were several politicians and donors left off the invitation list, but that she wasn't even making calls to check in and do basic political maintenance that they have come to expect. Instead of feeling connected to Harris in her historic first year in the office, they feel cut off. You know what's going on? I mean, Edward, you kind of hit it here. Edward says she has no value, she can't build trust. It's not even that. She doesn't trust herself. If you don't trust yourself, you're going to have a really, 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 really hard time trusting other people. Just the way it is. All right, Sleepy Eyes Carter, have a good rest of your night, my friend. Guys, again, please go subscribe to Sleepy Eyes Carter. He's doing a great job. We're almost done. Don't worry. The version of Harris that could be out in public, the one reminiscent of her more charismatic moment on the campaign trail, was on stage at Carnegie Hall last month. Harris was in New York for the 30th anniversary of Reverend Al Sharpton's National Action Network civil rights group. Unlike the reined-in, ultra-bland approach she often takes in public, Harris let loose, especially on the fight for voting rights. She ripped Republican governors Greg Abbott of Texas and Ron DeSantis of Florida for undoing the legacy of our heroes. New state voting laws and the other in those and others she charged were an extension of the big lie, saying, well, here's the truth. There was not rampant fraud. The people voted, and the results were certified after state and reaffirmed by court after court. The big lie is not anything but a lie. Okay, side note question. What like how is like what is the difference? What is authentic fish and chips? Like is it substantially different than what's here? I mean, I don't mind fish and chips. It's just kind of like I'm sure I'll probably have it at some point. But is there actually a difference? I don't know. I don't look into these things before I travel places. I like to be surprised. She was energetic and engaging, and the crowd was on its feet applauding as she presented Sharpton with a birthday cake and gently danced to the music playing over the speakers as he prepared to cut it. She seems, as she rarely does in public these days, happy and relaxed. The next afternoon, Sharpton told CNN he noticed that the event was one of her better public appearances. Harris felt at home, he reasoned, with a crowd committed to voting rights and criminal justice reform, which are two of the main issues that have defined her career. That brought her into a different headspace. Sharpton said he'd like to see more of that. He and other allies view next year's midterm campaigns as a perfect opportunity for her to shine and maybe recapture some of her standing with the base, if she's allowed to and able to. The administration ought to be using her more as the face in the voting rights fight. Being black and a woman, clown emojis, please. She's literally the physical manifestation of why we need to protect the right to vote, Sharpton said. Sharpton said she assumed Harris had I just misgendered Al Sharpton. Deepest apologies, YouTube, deepest apologies. Sharpton said he assumed Harris had spent the year trying to follow the White House's more constrained lead on how to approach all issues, given that Biden had largely avoided politics and donors, and even more of an aggressive public case for his agenda himself. The tone of the administration has been reach out bipartisanship. She, as vice president, does not want to get ahead of that administration. She did what vice presidents do. But now, he added, the whole tone of the administration has to change. Donna Brazile, one of several prominent black women, clown emoji, who urged Biden's advisors to put Harris on the ticket, agreed that it's time to retool after a rough first year. Brazile wants to see the vice president on the road almost constantly. Keep Air Force Two gassed up and ready to go, she joked. Whether talking about replacing lead pipes in Flint, Michigan, or expanding broadband in rural America, or focusing on improving schools in the suburbs, we have a demonstrably different definition of improving the schools. She is a wonderful messenger, but it has to be clear, concise, and consistent, said Brazile, still a frequent outside advisor to Harris. Don't make her a creature of the Beltway. Let her out. All right. So, my thoughts about this ridiculously long article, and I'd like to hear your thoughts in the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, please leave a comment and let me know. My thoughts on this article is that there wasn't much in it. There's not a lot of substance to this article. I mean, I picked through it and I said what I think is going on, which is I think that Kamala Harris is being neurotic, and I think she doesn't like the job that she's in. I think that she didn't understand the job that she signed up for, and she probably got really caught up in, I'm the first woman and the first black woman. I think she got so caught up in the intersectionality that she forgot that the vice presidency doesn't have any responsibilities. And she wants to do a different job than what she's in. Now, this was in a ridiculously long hit piece. Okay? This was a ridiculously long hit piece that didn't say much of anything. So, what does that tell you? What does that tell you guys? That CNN did a ridiculously long hit piece that didn't really say much of anything. I'm going to be honest. I didn't hear any workplace bullying in this. If Kamala Harris was bullying her staff, that should have come through in their extensive interviews. I didn't hear that in this. What I heard was a staff that didn't like their boss. Maybe they feel unappreciated by their boss, but most staffs feel unappreciated by their boss. That's like true of most people, right? Kamala Harris doesn't like the job she's in, so she's kind of shitty to her staff. That's not the same as bullying. Like, there's not, like, the difference between, like, a good boss and a bad boss is not, like, you love them or they're a bully. There's a lot of gray area in between them. But I think this is overblown. So then why we have to ask? Yeah, it felt pretty half-assed. I agree. So if they did all these extensive interviews and this is the best that they could come up with, what conclusion do you guys draw from that? I draw that the White House doesn't want Kamala Harris around, doesn't like Kamala Harris. It's just not working out. And they're trying to gently nudge her out the door. Maybe they should come up with some high level appointment. I don't know. Yeah, I think she's on her way out. And I think they replace her by Pete Buttigieg. But the last thing I want to show you guys is Jen Psaki's response. Look at this. Check this out. Jen Psaki's response. For anyone who needs to hear it, VP is not only a vital partner to POTUS, but a bold leader who has taken on key, important challenges facing the country, from voting rights to addressing root causes of migration to expanding broadband. Jen Psaki hates Kamala Harris. I guarantee you. There's just a tone in the way this was written. Like, if you have an entire article that comes out, and by the way, so this came out 9/20 yesterday. When was this article published? 9:07. And Jen Psaki's tweeting at 9:20. This just took us an hour and 20 minutes to read. Now, granted, like reading silently takes a lot less time than reading out loud. Okay, fine. But I think Jen Psaki hates Kamala Harris. I do. That was my first instinct with this, and I got that instinct like immediately. I don't know if it's because of the wording or it's just like instinctual, but I have really good instincts about this stuff. I think Jen Psaki hates Kamala Harris. And if she hates her, yeah, look at Ron DeSantis's freaking PR person. Christina's a great follow, by the way. Yikes, this is how you know it's bad. Basically, everyone's saying, like, Jen Psaki hates Kamala Harris. So, yeah, I think what's going on is they're trying to push Kamala Harris out. I don't think she's going to be around. I don't think she's going to be running. She's not cut out for this. If you're going to be upset over mean tweets, I'm sorry. You are not cut out to be vice president of the United States. I'm sorry, Kamala. Go get on some boards, some like corporate boards, make a ton of money, do the speaking circuit, write your book, sail off into the sunset, collect that payday, because she doesn't like this job. And maybe she feels like she needs to stay in it for appearances because she's the first woman and she can't give up and she can't be made to look like a failure. But I don't think it's healthy. To be really honest, I don't think it's personally healthy to stay in a job you hate when you really don't have to. Kamala Harris does not need to stay in this job. Kamala Harris obviously hates this job. So she should go. Ride off into the sunset. Get some corporate boards, making a lot of money where she doesn't really have to do anything except show up. I think that'd be the best thing for her. Honestly, they'll slide Pete Buttigieg right into that position. Be like, first gay vice president. He'll be all excited. And I think Pete Buttigieg is actually much more inclined to accept that he doesn't need to do anything. Pete Buttigieg, vice president would be the perfect role for Pete Buttigieg. He doesn't need to do anything. He can hang out with those two kids, spend more time with his husband, not do anything. All right, guys, that's all I have for this. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on an impromptu Monday stream. As a reminder, please make sure you mount that like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel, and please make sure you join me in my locals community at kb.locals.com. You can also make sure that you can sign up as a supporter on Locals. I have a community Zoom call with my Locals supporters, that is, tomorrow at 6 p.m. So this time tomorrow, I will actually be chatting on a private Zoom call. They're not recorded or anything, with members of my Locals community. There's no reason that you guys can't be there. All you need to do is sign up as a supporter. You can do that over on kb.locals.com/support. It comes at a price tag of $5 a month or more if you want to, but you don't have to. $5 is fine. You can do it for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free, or you can make a one-time gift. All that is good. And that's all I have for right now, guys. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon.